All right, glad to have our next guest. Always, you can turn it down there, Abby. Always, well, you know, we were just talking during the break, and he was saying, you know, you can have me on the show as often as you want. I want you to be on the show. You know him from Infowars.com, creator, owner, host of the Alex Jones Show on Infowars. Been making the rounds here recently on Joe Rogan. Mr. Jones, how are you, sir?
It is good to be here with you, Mr. Crowder. Big fan of the broadcast, so are my kids.
You know what? I'll tell you this. I'm always a little worried about you being on the show because I always feel I'm always worried that you'll come on the show and ask me why I haven't had you on the show, and then we get into a fight.
But we've never really had a fight, so I totally get that you're doing a great job. I watch it all the time, do lots of skits, lots of events yourself. You don't have a lot of guests on these days, so I'm just happy to be here and the great work you're doing over at CRTV and all the rest of it.
Well, thank you very much. Now, I'm happy to have you on. We've kind of changed roles here. I notice you're in a short sleeve, where usually you wear a suit, and usually I'm in something a little shorter sleeve, but you just had a recent surgery. Now, was it your bicep to your elbow or to the shoulder? Because that's a huge difference in the surgery.
Yeah, the shoulder would be much, much worse. This is a ruptured bicep. They just fixed it last week. I shouldn't be out of the cast, but it's the miracles of modern medicine.
It is, and I know. Sometimes people have put you in since you're more. They would say conspiratorial with anti-vaxxers, and I know that you're not, and I know you don't shun the miracles of miracles of modern medicine. Pardon me, I'm very, very sick. There's no way I'm pronouncing that broad from Twitter's name correctly today. Before we get on to the censorship issue with you and kind of the deplatforming, first, what has the feedback been like after your latest Joe Rogan appearance? Because you guys were going back and forth for a bit, a lot of fighting. How did you two bury the hatchet so quickly?
Well, I didn't like the fact that Jack Dorsey went on there and just spewed BS a month ago.
Right.
And the fact that Joe was like going over Democratic Party talking points. I've known Joe for 20 years. We've been pretty good friends. A lot of partying, a lot of hanging out, again, over 2 decades. And so I got madder and madder and madder that he says on air, I'm not going to have Alex on, but then he's going to have my enemies on. So I kind of got upset with him.
Right.
But then, once he had me on, we had a great 4-hour plus podcast. It's the biggest podcast he's ever done. Something like 20 million views right now, 10 million views on YouTube, 10 million views roughly on iTunes. So it's one of the biggest podcasts ever. And he's got nothing but positive feedback, 97% positive feedback. Conversely, the head of Twitter goes on a month ago, he had 80+% negative feedback. So as we were talking before we went live here, Jack and his mother, I guess her name is Vijaya God, literally it's her name. She goes on and holds his hand and says, we're not censoring anybody, but we did take Alex Jones off for beating a kid up. And there was no video. They didn't name the kid's name. When you hear about a murder or a kidnapping or an assault.
To be clear, I don't think I said you beat up a kid. I think they claimed that you posted a video of a kid being beaten up, which I also don't know to be true. But again, that would be an entirely different. No. I'm pretty sure we have, by the way.
That's what's so Space Cadet.
I'll take those arrows because I'm pretty sure we have.
You're absolutely right. Forbes and others said I beat up a kid and then showed the ABC, NBC video of the 10-year-old hitting the adult. The guy knocks him down.
Right.
They just went and picked that. And so then they said I was taken down for beating up a kid. They had to retract it. By the time she said it on air as a lawyer, she said, oh, well, he showed a video of a kid being beat up. Yeah. It's insane. So why can't I show a video that everyone else can show is my point.
Right. No, exactly. And I say that because I'm pretty sure we have, and we probably provided some. I mean, we show videos almost on a loop, like a morphine drip of Muslim men beating their wives in Saudi Arabia all the time, just to keep it at the forefront of people's mind. We usually play the chicken dance to it. So I'll take the flack there. We are far more distasteful than you in the realm of domestic abuse videos, Alex. Let me. So did you? I take it you watched the recent podcast with Joe and Jack Dorsey coming back and Tim Pool. Did you think that was kind of a better sequel?
Well, it took me from hating Joe to wanting to marry him. I mean, I'm not gay, but the point is they destroyed that lawyer, Vijaya God. They destroyed Jack. I mean, it was like a suicide mission. They come on there and BS that we're not censoring conservatives when we've got all their internal videos from Project Veritas and all their admissions and the incredible censorship, and they allow Antifa to dox people, but nobody else can. And so, yes, this just shows the disconnect and how robotic these corporate heads are. It was actually frightening. I thought it was actually a terrifying podcast.
Well, I think there were some good questions, some pointed questions. But for me, kind of the moment where I noticed I don't think Jack's going to get it. I don't think they can fix this, is when he unironically used the term LGBTQA about 2 times. And he didn't realize that, you know what, we're not even the gay in the LGBTQA are on board with just tacking on every single letter to that acronym. I don't know that they can fix that blind spot. That was, when I was watching it, I thought Joe and Tim did a good job of holding their feet to the fire, but it felt like a hopeless endeavor. I don't want to be a nihilist, but do you feel like that sometimes when you watch this, especially given your situation?
Yeah, it frightened me, because she said not just that I got in trouble for showing child endangerment, which wasn't true. It was the clip was everywhere in the country. I mean, I got to it late. They then moved on and said that I said use battle rifles on the media, but they didn't show a clip. They took a 38-minute podcast I did one night, but I had a few beers. But none of it had to do with violence. It was like, we don't want to be violent. We've got to use the criminal judicial system. And Antifa says they're coming to the houses of law enforcement and Congress to kill them. You better have your battle rifles ready. So they played this word salad game, like the refrigerator magnets, where you change the words around. And she reads this statement that's literally one word with quotes around another word, and says that, Joe, we had to take him off. He was saying kill the media. I would never do that. A, I don't believe in offensive violence. I'm a libertarian. B, I'd be arrested. I should be off the air if I was on air saying, get your battle rifles ready and kill the media. Right. I'm the media. I don't want people killing me. I never said that. And I challenged them. I put out $1 million reward when they had all these different talk show hosts covering it. They had Lester Holt and they had Jack Dorsey on with him. And he's like, it's pretty scary. He said, use battle rifles to kill the media. And he said, we're going to do all this. He goes, I know it's scary, but we got to keep him on. It was all just a big staged event to act like they were, free speech, but they were still planning to get rid of me. And I offered $1 million. I had lawyers send them letters. I called Twitter and I said, I did not say that. And they keep saying it. So I'm not the victim. I think Twitter is the victim of their own delusion, where they tell gigantic whopper lies that have no basis in reality. I mean, listen, Steven Crowder, if I was going to accuse you of saying kill the media with battle rifles, would I not show the damn clip?
I will say this, and you and I disagree on quite a bit, but you are pretty good about that, about showing clips contextually, and we do that too. Do you believe this when you do your broadcast? I always say, listen, this is kind of a standing order I have to everyone on my staff. Don't make an argument for the left if they can make it for you. Always show their clip and provide all context needed for us to rebut. We have that and that's what we get hit with so many copyrights, because we'll just roll Seth Meyers for 2 minutes, or Samantha Bee, or Cortez. And
exactly. You've got to show Cortez saying the earth will be over in 12 years or no one will believe it. Right. And then we play it and we get a copyright. No, she's a public figure. She said the world will be over in 12 years. Right. I'm going to play the damn clip because it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Have you seen, by the way, I know you're not on YouTube now, but it seems as though there might be some retroactive changes here after listening to Dorsey and Vijaya, some of that.
Yeah, the road to redemption.
Right. And one thing I will say, I know a lot of people will watch this and say, well, I'm not in with Alex Jones. I don't agree with him. But here's the thing. I understand where people feel that way, but they also need to look at you as a cautionary tale of the fact that it can happen to anyone. Let's take this example recently where you just brought up right now. Let's use that because you just brought it up, the battle rifles. Now, I wasn't fully aware of the quote or the clip, right? Because I didn't show it. And I didn't have time to fully research it. I immediately assumed it was allegorical if taken in context. And I thought, man, if they can say that this was one of the retroactive strikes we found, and we know you were deplatformed by everyone in the same weekend, so they're all looking for a reason, right? Give me a reason. I'm going, hold on a second. If they can remove someone for even just saying, hey, this is a call to arms, metaphorically, to fight back against the media, they can do it to anyone, and I do think people need to take notice of that, regardless of whether they agree with you or not.
Well, that's it. And then people think they protect themselves when they build a straw man about me and then attack it. They go, oh, well, if we just throw them under the bus, we'll be safe. No, you set the precedent for everybody else. So what they did is they could have gone back and found some real stuff I said out of context, but still some things I said later that I'm like, I shouldn't have said that. It didn't come off as tongue in cheek, whatever. But with the case of the items that you mentioned, I would never even tongue-in-cheek say, you're coming over the hill, it's the Alamo, get your guns ready, because they're going to take it out of context.
Right.
So if one thing, the left lying 10 years ago, I'd said stuff like that allegorically. I'm not about to do that. So the point was, I'm like, we need to peacefully, through the courts of the criminal justice system, stand up and if Antifa attacks our homes, we need to not be offensive because, like Martin Luther King said, and Gandhi and Jesus, we need to take it on the cheek because that's how we beat them. Violence is what they want. The damn 38-minute podcast was about nonviolence.
It wasn't exactly like that, but I understand your point.
But I said, but I said at the point, you play the whole thing. I said at the point of them attacking your house, you got to defend yourself and have your battle rifles ready.
Of course.
So it was a debate about how far to go. The point was, I did not say go attack the media.
Sure.
That is made up. $1 million prize. If you can find me saying get battle rifles and go after the media, I'll pay you $1 million.
I'm not going to collect that check, just like the people never collected the check for the United Negroes College Fund when Andrew Breitbart offered it for anyone who could find footage of them hurling the N-word at Congressman Clyburn. I do think, and this is one thing that the left has admitted now, they didn't used to admit. I thought it was very telling that Jack Dorsey and, not going to say her name on here, sounds like vagina, but Jack Dorsey, two that's okay, we'll believe it.
Vagina Good. That's a cool name, like Vagina Good.
That's a pretty cool name.
What's wrong with making a joke about the name?
Especially if she has
are good.
If I were her parents, I would name her twin sister Penis Bad, so that they have to introduce them as Vagina Good, Penis Bad. That's what I would do, but I would be a cruel parent.
I came out of a vagina. I love vaginas. I spent my whole life trying to get my face in vaginas.
And demonetized right now. Immediately demonetized. Thank you, Alex. What was I talking about before? I was talking about something before this, and I don't remember what it was. Oh. Jack Dorsey did say,
Stephen,
listen.
You started it. You began to start the jokes about her name, so just don't.
I did. It is my fault. I take full responsibility.
Stop raping her name. Stop raping Vagina Good.
The name. Let's please don't. Are you trying to get me put in jail like you, the social media deplatform jail? Please don't do this. My point is with Jack Dorsey.
Just cut it out then. Are we live?
Jack Dorsey said, as it relates to sort of political pressures, external political pressures. I don't have the exact quote, but I remember him saying, the left wants us to do more. The left wants us to censor people more, and the right wants less. He admitted that. And we've talked about that on the show for a long time. I know you have, that the left demands less transparency. The left demands less truth, whereas conservatives, the right, libertarians, everyone under that umbrella, demands more. They used to try and deny that. It seems as though now they're not even concerned with it.
No, I agree. So why do you think they're just openly, we're going to censor everybody?
I don't think that they're openly saying we're going to censor everybody. They tried to sort of obfuscate and pass it off as, well, we might be a bit of an echo chamber.
No. They denied it for a while. But if you read like the London Guardian or even Time Magazine or these articles, they're like, we want all them off. They mention your name. They go, well, we got rid of Jones. We want to get rid of Crowder and all the. I mean, they're listing your name. They're saying we want them off air.
I know Twitter is more open about that, but Facebook and YouTube are at least trying to act as though that's not the case. But I know Twitter is pretty open about the fact that they want to use it as a.
No, you're right. The future British Prime Minister is saying, he wants Tommy Robinson taken off YouTube, or he'll use governmental powers to shut down YouTube. So I agree. As bad as Google's been, it is not the worst. So let me ask you this: Who gets the brass ring? Who is the biggest censor on the internet?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I was going to ask you this question immediately afterward. Right now, who do I think is the biggest force? Do you mean who do I think has the most power? Is that what you're asking me?
I think Google has the most power.
Yes, I would say I think Google, then Facebook, because they have both Google and YouTube, then probably Facebook, and Twitter is further on down that list. That's why when we've talked about sort of taking legal action, and we have, they're not at the front of our queue, because they've pretty much admitted they want to be a tool for social change. But this is interesting. As you're a libertarian, I've talked with Nigel Farage about this, a few different guests. What do you think the solution is? As a small government libertarian, do you think that the government should step in and regulate them as public utilities? Because as you just talked about, right, that's a slippery slope. In the UK, the government wants to pressure YouTube to take Tommy Robinson off. But what's the solution here?
I'm really glad you raised that nuanced point, Mr. Crowder. If we don't regulate the internet with the necessary evil, with a prohibition, like the Second Amendment says you will not infringe. Right. The First Amendment says you will not infringe. It's not a government power taking something away. It's a guarantor saying that you have immunity as a citizen to defend yourself. You have immunity to have free speech. This is sacrosanct. This is what we worship. This is who we are. This is what makes us who we are. And so, yes, I don't like government being involved. I'm a libertarian like you. But then when the EU and the UK and government says we're going to use government power to censor and shut everybody down who's a nationalist, who's a Brexiter, who's a conservative, who's pro-military, who's pro-family, who's a capitalist, then you've got to have government come in and say, we're guaranteeing these basic rights like our current law does on the internet. It's just being ignored. And so the internet needs to go back to where it was, where the internet doesn't censor. These companies don't censor unless something's violating law clearly, and they get a DMCA takedown order we have a good orderly system to do this. They've just been ignoring that the last 2.5 years since Hillary Clinton lost the election. They've panicked. They're doing this. So I'm not for regulation. But instead, when we stand down, it creates a vacuum where all these regulators come in, and we let the EU and the UK and the Chinese governments praising US companies for censoring. So that vacuum, because we're conservatives, Heritage Foundation, these are private companies, let them do whatever they want. Well, now we just gave in to the vacuum of all these other very rapacious forces.
Here's what I've proposed, at least as a step. Tell me if you agree with this or not. I think that what we need to do is have some transparency. Again, as we've talked about, conservatives, libertarians, we demand transparency. I think that YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and any other social media platforms, they need to publicly declare whether they see themselves as publishers or as open platforms that they do not censor. If they say, hey, we're private publishers, like a BuzzFeed, like a HuffPo, then we say, okay, then you're no longer a social media platform. Fine, let's be honest about it. Now we need to see some transparency. If they
by the way, you show you've done your research. That's the federal international law.
Right.
Under the subsection, they have liability protection. A newspaper or a TV station doesn't. But because they have third-party posting, they have liability protection. They're not supposed to be a publisher. So the minute they engage in publisher control, they now lose their immunity.
Right. So do you think that probably the most important first step would be for them to have to formally declare whether they are a neutral platform or publisher? Because then we can hold them to their own standards.
Yes, I agree. If they won't back off and stop being authoritarian censors, I'd rather them use the immunity as a third. I mean, it's not their fault if I'm on a telephone saying something or I'm on Facebook.
Exactly.
And once it's criminal, they take it down. So I'd rather them revert to what greater minds in the free market and those that built the internet came up with that worked so great instead of the Chinese model. I'd rather them back off. But yes, you're right, Stephen. If they will not stop, then we have to strip them of their immunity.
Okay, final question here. I'll go in a different direction. We do have to get going. A lot of talk, obviously, since you were on Joe Rogan, about you mentioned the clockwork elves. And this was very entertaining once Eddie Bravo came in, and it seemed as though there were some miscommunications, but it was a lot of fun to watch. Here's one thing that I do want to clarify. You talked about these sort of elven figures, let's say. It seemed like you were trying to stress, I noticed this, that you weren't talking about aliens, extraterrestrials, or vampires. But am I wrong in saying a more biblically based interpretation of kind of demonic apparitions? That's what you were trying to communicate? Because I did find that interesting. I don't think a lot of people who aren't familiar with you, associate you with your more faith-based worldview.
Exactly. If people want to find out what I really believe, Infowars.com, newswars.com, they can hear it in this context. I've never seen aliens. I'm not into UFOs. I don't go to UFO conferences. I'm not that guy. I never really covered the lizard people. I've had David Icke on. Studying globalists and studying what they're into, they are into the occult, just like every major ancient religion thought they were conjuring creatures. They were getting data from beyond the veil. And so when you read the Bible about one world government, mark of the beast, and there'll be humans conjuring demons, and demons will be set loose on the earth, and then you study San Francisco and the liberals, they're taking DMT, they're taking ayahuasca, and they're having group events with 20, 30, 50, 100 people. And by the way, Joe Rogan said this on air. We never got there fully, but we had an hour-and-a-half conversation before we went live, and he says, listen, you're thinking about clockwork elves. He goes, I take DMT all the time. He goes, we have basically group experiences. We're talking to these aliens, and they look like little elves. And I'm like, well, listen, I'm not going to take that because that scares me, okay? All I know is the Bible describes it. You can look at black magic books written 1,000 years ago, and it shows the magician conjures a little thing. It looks like a little gray alien. So yes, the demons that we hear about in modern culture, or the aliens we hear about in modern culture, are the demons. And so it fits in perfectly. Like the Aztecs would sacrifice thousands of people a day sometimes because they believed it opened up a portal for gods to tell them things. So it's like chumming the ocean for sharks to come. These lower entities, these demons, want blood of children historically, whether they're real or not. I'm saying the elites are obsessed with it. Yes, it's far out. Yes, it's crazy. But this is what they believe, and they believe killing innocents or doing horrible things brings in these entities that then give them knowledge.
Hey, hold on, Alex. Since this is a pre-tape because I'm so sick, can you pause real quick and we'll do this as an after the bell and upload this as another segment because I'd like to get into this